So welcome everybody to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over the higher topic test of statistics averages on the GCSE Maths higher syllabus. Now before we get started working through this topic test, a little reminder that you can download the questions by clicking on the link in the description. I strongly recommend having a go at these questions before watching me go through how to answer these questions, and also be sure to check out the 162 Maths contents page for easy access on video lessons covering all the topics in Key Stage 3 GCSE and A-level content, along with all other revision resources such as more topic tests and exam paper walkthroughs. And you can access this by also click on the link in the description. So let's get started on question 1. So question 1 reads, 6 positive whole numbers have a mean of 11 and a range of 18. 4 of the numbers are 10, 9, 14 and 5, and the question is asking us to work out the other two numbers. Now looking at the first bit of information, it says that the mean of the 6 numbers is 11. So that means that the total sum of all 6 numbers must add up to 6 times 11, which is 66. So if I call the two numbers that I'm wanting to find x and y, then what I know is that, and I add up all the numbers that I do know, which add up to 38, I know that x plus y plus 38 equals 66, which means then that x plus y equals 28. So what I'm looking for are two numbers that add together to give us 28. Now the next thing I look at is the range of 18. Well, so far I don't know whether x or y is going to be a number smaller than 5, but we know that at the moment 5 is the smallest number. So if I then add 5 to 18, which is the range, then I'm going to get an answer of 23. And if I was to add 5 and 23 together, that comes up to that number of 28. So the only combination I can then have is going to be 5 and 23. And you can write those numbers in any order you wish. Moving on to question 2, it says 5 positive whole numbers have a mode of 9, a median of 7 and a mean of 6. And the question is asking us to find the greatest possible range of the 5 numbers. Now when you get a question like this, I always recommend students to not play hangman in the middle of their exam, but to set up 5 dashes, and this is what represents our 5 numbers. Now looking at the order in which a question is given is usually the order in which you want to tackle a particular problem. So here it says that the mode is 9, so we know that we need to have at least 2 9s. The median is 7. Now because we've got 5 numbers, having a median of 7 means that the middle number must be 7. Now if I've got a mode of 9, that means at least 2 numbers has to be equal to 9, and because I've only got 5 numbers, I must have 2 9s for it to be the mode, because I can't have 3 because I've only got space for 2 other numbers bigger than 7. Now the next thing then it says got a mean of 6. Well, if I've got 5 numbers with a mean of 6, then the total sum is going to be 5 times 6, which is 30. So that means that all of these numbers have to add up to 30. So adding up the numbers that I know, so I've got 18 plus 7, which gives me 25. So that means that these two numbers need to add up to equal 5. Now the fact that the two numbers have got to be positive whole, then the only combinations of numbers that I can have are going to be 1 and 4 or 2 and 3. Now the question is asking for the greatest possible range. So if I was to pick 2 and 3, then the range would be 9 minus 2, which is 7. However, if I picked 1 and 4, then the range is going to be 9 take away 1, which is 8. So that means that the greatest range is going to be, equal 8, and that's by having the two missing numbers as 1 and 4. When I say missing numbers, you know what I mean. Moving on to question 3, it says a school play takes place on each day from Monday to Friday. Here are the attendances of the first 4 days. And the question says that if all of the 5 days have a mean attendance of 77, work out the attendance on Friday. Well, if the mean attendance is 77 for all 5 days, then the total attendance is going to be 5 times 77, which gives me an answer of 385. So that means if I just add Friday and just call that X for now, then what that means is 54 plus 63 plus 76 plus 87 plus X must add up to 385. So all that's left for me to then do is work out what this total here is, which is 280 plus X equals 385. And then if I take the 280 over to the other side, that leaves me with an X value of 105. Moving on to question 4, it says 12 red flowers in a garden have a mean height of 21 and 24 white flowers in a garden have a mean of 27 centimeters. And the question is asking us to calculate the mean height of all the flowers. So for this, what I need to do is I need to work out what the total height of all flowers are. Now, to work out the total, and this is just a general rule, to work out the total, it's the mean multiplied by the number of numbers. In other words, the number that you would typically divide by to get the mean. So to work out the total height of the flowers rather, so for the red, it's going to be 12 times 21. And for the white flowers, that's going to be 24 multiplied by 27. And if I use my calculator to work that out, I get 12 times 21, which is 252, and 24 multiplied by 27, which is 648. So the grand total is going to be 900. So from this, if we know that the total height, so the overall mean, is going to be the total of all of the 36 flowers, which is 900, divided by 36. And if I type that into my calculator, I get an answer of 25 centimeters. Now moving on to question 5, it says 106 boys and 89 girls took a test. The table shows information about the mean marks, and the pass mark for the test was 60. Was the mean mark for all of students greater than the pass mark? You must show your working out. So for this, what we need to do is we need to work out what the overall mean mark is for all of the students. So let's just have a look at the information. So we know that the total students is going to be 106 plus 89, which gives me an answer of 196 in total. Now the next thing for me then to do is to work out what the total marks score is for all of the 196. So if we added up all of the 196 student scores, what marks do we end up with at the end? Well, to do this, what we need to do is to work out the total. It's the mean multiplied by the number of numbers. So in terms of this, the boys' total marks are going to be 106 multiplied by 58.3. And if I type that into my calculator, 106 multiplied by 58.3, I get an answer of 6,179.8. Now don't worry too much about the 0.8, that's going to be due to some rounding, like the mean mark might have been rounded to 58.3, but this moment in time, that's what we've got. Then if I look at the girls' total number of marks, then that's going to be 89 multiplied by 62.9, which gives me an answer of 5,500. And let me just double check the answer, 5,598.1. So then adding up those scores, I get a total of 11777.9. So to work out the overall mean, that's going to be 11,777.9 divided by 196, and that gives me a mean score of 60.399. Continuing. Now from this, all that's left for me to then do is compare that to the pass mark of 60. So the question is asking, was the mean mark of all the students greater than the pass mark? Yes, it was. And again, in terms of the evidence, as 60.399 is greater than 60. And there we go for that one. Now for the next question, it says that a range of a set of numbers is 12 and a third. The smallest number is -3 and 5/6, and the question is asking us to work out what the largest number is. Well, to work out the range, that's going to be the biggest number minus the smallest. So if the range is 12 and a third and the smallest number is -5/6, let's just call our biggest number x. So from this, two minuses become a plus. So this then combines to be a plus. So to work out x, what I need to do is take away 3 and 5/6 away from 12 and 1/3. So what I want to work out is 12 and a third minus 3 and 5/6. So to do this, what I need to do is work with mixed fractions, in which we multiply the big number by the bottom number, add it to the top. So 12 times 3 plus 1 is going to give me 36 plus 1, which is 37 over 3. 3 times 6 is 18 plus 5 gives me 23 over 6. I'm going to assume that this is a non-calculated paper, because otherwise if it was just on a calculated paper, I'd just type it into my calculator and there we go. So from this, all I need to do is although I can divide 6 to get to 3 by dividing by 2, that's going to leave me, well, I could do it that way, it doesn't really matter. So we can do 37 over 3 minus, and that's going to be 11.5 over 3. And then all that's left for me to then do is just do 37, take away 11.5, and 37 minus 11.5 gives me an answer of 25.5. Now from this, we don't want to leave it as a fraction, like with a decimal in a fraction. So again, if you want to work with this, that's entirely up to you. Personally, I wouldn't, but again, if you did do it this way, we'll need to write this as 25.5 divided by 3, which is 51 over 2 divided by 3, and that's 51 over 2 divided by 3, which then gives me 51 over 2 multiplied by 1 over 3, which is 51 over 6. And then from this, what we can then do is we can, if I was to convert this and double this first fraction, this is just another way of doing this. So if I was to double this, 37 times 2 is going to give me 74 over 6 minus 23 over 6, and 74 minus 23 gives me an answer of 51, so that's 51 over 6. So as you can see, I get the same answer doing it both ways. Ultimately, I would say convert 37 over 3 to 74 over 6. And then again, whether it wants me to write this as a mixed number is entirely up to you, because it does not specify. So what I will then do is write this as 17 over 2, or I can write this as (8.5) or 8.5. So any of those answers would be absolutely fine. Now, before we get started on question 7, there was a bit of a typo on the question that was written for question 7. It does mention in the information that it tells you what James scored on his 6th test, when actually it's the score from the 5th test. And the only reason why I know that is because it talks about after all 5 tests that the mean percentages were equal. So if the original writing of 6th test was there, this will be a much difficult question for us to then do. So looking at this particular question, it says that James and Abigail set 5 tests, each with 40 marks. The table shows their mean percentages after 4 tests. After all 5 tests, their mean percentages were equal. In the 5th test, James scored 26 out of 40, and the question is asking us to work out Abigail's score out of 40 in the 5th test. So let's first of all, for this particular question, what we need to do is we need to work out how many marks in total James and Abigail got from their first 4 tests. So if I just write down James and I write down Abigail, and what I want is their total scores after 4 tests. Now, just like we did in the previous questions, to work out the total for this particular case, what we need to do is we know that the total of 4 tests is going to be 4 times 40, which is 160. So what I need to do is I need to multiply both their percentage scores by 160. Now, if I do 70% of 160, then that's going to give me an answer of 112. And if I do 65% of 160, that's going to give me an answer of 104. So that's going to be 112 and 104. Now, the score from the 5th test was 26 for James, and for Abigail, I'm just going to call that X as I don't know what that is. Now, what it tells us is that if their mean percentages were equal, then that also means that their total score, mark score, so the total marks score after 5 tests are equal. So to work out their total number of marks, I add 112 plus 26, which gives me 138. So that means if the mean percentages are going to be equal, that Abigail also gets a total score of 138. So for this, all I need to do is do 104 plus X equals 138. Take the 104 over to the side by subtracting, and I get an X value of 34. So Abigail got 34 out of 40 on her 5th test. Now, moving on to question 8, it says here are 2 sets of numbers A and B. And the information it tells us in the question that the mean of set A to the mean of set B is in the ratio of 2 to 5. And the question is asking us to work out the value of X. So for this, what we need to do is we need to work out, in order to work out the mean, that's the total scores divided by the number of numbers that we have. So looking at set A, that the total of all of those numbers, if I add up those 4 numbers, is going to give me 640. That's just by adding up all of those numbers together. So to work out the mean of A, that's going to be 640 divided by 4, and that gives me an answer of 160. So I'm just going to leave that there. So that's the mean of A. I'll put a little box around that. I then need to repeat this for set B. So the total of set B, if I add up those 4 numbers, is going to give me 1,760 plus X. So the mean of B is going to be 1,760 plus X divided by 5. And again, I don't know what that is because I need to work it out. Now, looking at the ratio, it tells us that we've got a ratio of 2 to 5, which can also be written as 1 to 2.5. So that means that the mean of B is 2.5 times bigger than the mean of A. Now the mean, so using this, that the mean of B is going to be 2.5 multiplied by the mean of A. Now if I worked out what 2.5 times 160 is, that gives me an answer of 400. So that means that the mean score of B equals 400. So what I now need to do is I need to solve this equation here. So I start by taking the 5 over to the other side, which gives me 2,000. And then I take away 1,760 away from 2,000, which gives me the value of X. And that value of X is going to be 240. Moving on to question 9, it says a netball team plays 8 games. After 7 games, the team has a mean score of 26 points per game, and at the end of 8 games, the team has a mean score of 24 points per game. And the question is asking us to work out the number of points the team scored in their 8th game. So let's have a look at this. So to work out the answer for this, what I need to do is I need to work out the total scores after 7 games. And to do that, what I do is I multiply the number by the mean. So 7 times 26 gives me 182 points. Then if the mean score is 24 points after 8 games, so if I actually work out what that is, that's so the mean is equal to the total number of points divided by, and that's going to be 8. So first of all, to work out the total number of points, we know that the mean of scores after 8 games is equal to the total score divided by 8. Now, based on the information that I've been given, I know that the mean is going to be 24. I know that the total is going to be 182 plus x, and x is the score of the 8th game, divided by 8 equals 24. And then once I've got the equation, all I now need to do is solve it. So I take the 8 by multiplying by 8, in which I get an answer of 192. So 192 equals 182 plus x, and so therefore x must equal 10. So the answer I should get for this particular question, or the answer that the netball team scored in their 8th game, is going to be 10. Moving on to question 10, it says in a class of 32 students, the mean height of 18 boys is 1.62 meters. The mean height of all 32 students is 1.86 meters. And the question is asking us to work out the mean height of all the girls. So for this, to work out the total mean, that's going to be the total heights of the boys plus the total of the girls divided by the total number of students. Now, so far, what we don't know any of this information apart from the fact that we know that this is 32. So to work out the total of the boys, well, to do that, I multiply 18 by 1.6, so 18 times 1.63. And if I type that into my calculator, 18 times 1.63 gives me an answer of 29.34. So this number here is 29.34. Then we know that the total mean height is, so know that this is going to equal 1.56. And what we need to do is we need to work out what the mean of the height of the girls is. Well, to work out the total height of all girls, well, that's going to be looking at this formula here. So I've got 1.56 equals 29.34 plus x over 32. So if I then go on and solve out what x is, I take the 32 over to this side, in which I get 1.56 multiplied by 32, which equals 49.92 equals 29.34 plus x. So the total height of all girls is going to equal x, which equals 49.92 minus 29.34 gives us a total height of 20.58 meters. Now we know that there are going to be, so the number of girls is going to be 32 minus 18, which gives me an answer of 14. So there's 14 girls. So the mean of the girls is going to be 20.58 divided by 14. And 20.58 divided by 14 gives me a total height of 1.47 meters. Then moving on to question 11, it says the mean mass of a squad of 18 hockey players is 82.7 kilograms. A new player of a mass of 96 kilograms joins the squad. What is the mean mass of the squad now? So first things first, what we need to do is we need to work out what the total weight before the player joined. And to do that, what we do is we multiply the number by the mean. So that's going to be 18 multiplied by 82.7. Now if I work that out on my calculator, I get an answer of 1488.6 kilograms. Now to get the new mean or the new total weight, what I need to do is add 96 kilograms to that answer. So if I add 96 to the answer, I get an answer of 1584.6 kilograms. So then to work out the mean mass, it's going to be the total weight, which I've just worked out as 1584.6 divided by the total number of players. Well, if there's 18 and a new player joins, that means there's going to be 19 players. And typing that into my calculator, I get a new mean of 83.4 kilograms. Now for question 12, it says in 1 month the number of hours of exercise taken by 10 people are 0, 8, 6, 7, 3, 2, 4, 92, 1 and 5. Which is the most appropriate average for them to use in this data? And it says tick one box, and then we need to give a reason why the other two averages are not appropriate for this data. Well, for this, the correct average that we need to use is going to be the median. So that's the box that we then need to tick. Now, a reason for what not using the mean is 92 is an outlier. So we'll sort of distort the calculation. Now, you don't have to say that word for word, but basically knowing that we're using a possible outlier from that actual score, from those listed numbers, is going to affect the mean. So when we add up all those numbers, divide by 10, using 92 is going to massively mess our results up. Now, in terms of the other average I could have used is the mode. Well, looking at this set of numbers, I have no mode. So there is no mode. So would be pointless to use. So again, something along those lines, just side by saying there is no mode, so there's no point using that. If there was a number that was repeated more often than the others, then the mode may be an acceptable answer or average to use. Then moving on to question 13, it says Lydia took part in a high jump competition. There were 7 other women in the competition. The height jumped in meters by the 7 other women were, and we've got all 7 heights. The mean height of all 8 women in the competition was 1.36 meters, and the question is asking us, did Lydia win the competition? So for this, let's start by saying that Lydia's jump is X. So let's just stick an X there. Now, if we then work out what the total heights were, what I then do is add up all of these 7 numbers, in which I get 9.45 meters plus X. So to work out the mean, that's going to be the total, which is 9.45 plus X, divided by 8, because there are 8 women jumping, and that came up to a total of 1.36. So it's this equation that I then need to solve to work out what X is. So if I do 9.45 plus X, that's going to equal, taking the 8 over to the other side, that's going to equal 8 times 1.36, gives me an answer of 10.88. Then if I take the 9.5 over to the side by subtracting, I get an X value of 1.43. So Lydia's jump is 1.43. Now the question says, did Lydia win the competition? Well, looking at the scores and comparing the results of 1.43, which is Lydia's jump, to the others, the answer is yes. And again, so I can write yes, as 1.43 is bigger than 1.42, which is the second highest jump that we had there. And that concludes the end of these questions.